Welcome back to the channel. Today is the day that we are going to start tearing into our project on our 1998 Mitsubishi 3000gt VR4. So I am going to be pulling the motor and trans out of this car. I'm going to be doing them together, and I'm going to try to make a demonstrated video for you guys so that way you can see kind of how I'm doing it and give you a couple tips and tricks along the way. Now, the reason for pulling all this is a couple different things. Number one, I do want to repaint this car probably a different color. So in order to paint and do a proper job, we need all of this out of here and everything removed from this bay in order to do that. We're also going to do quite a bit of maintenance on our motor here. We're going to do a lot of stuff that it's just easier to pull everything out of the car and work on it outside. That's going to make things a ton easier when we're working on the turbos, manifolds, and just kind of going over and also just cleaning this thing up in general. It needs to be cleaned up. And the other thing you might have just saw on video, the car has an issue with the reverse gear in the transmission. So we're gonna have to get that pulled out as well in order for us to break it down and take a look at it. One last thing is I'm gonna try not to make this whole entire build like a crazy long series like I did on my last car. I'm gonna try to wrap it up and try to consolidate everything as best as I can. I don't want this to be another like 70-part series. What we're gonna do is we're gonna jack this car up first, and we're gonna go ahead and start draining a majority of the fluids on this so we can get all those out of here. And then once we're done kind of with the bottom side of this, then we will work our way onto the top side of the motor and start handling everything up here up top. Car's all up on stands. We have the front bumper off, and right now we're just getting ready to drain both the oil from the motor and also the coolant. So if we come down here, you're gonna look for like this little tube straw, and it has this little kind of like a screw top plastic piece right here. We're just gonna crack this loose, and it should start draining out coolant into our bucket here for us. Just like so. And then oil pan, get under here. This is a 17 millimeter, hit it with a wrench, break it loose, and we'll throw our pan underneath, and we'll let both of these go. While all my fluids are draining down here, we're gonna come up here to the top, and we're just gonna start working on some of this intercooler piping all in here. I'm gonna be replacing all of the intercooler piping on everything on this car. We need to get this battery out of here too as well, so that way we have room to pull our intake arm off and get access better into here. And also we don't want any electrical connections getting messed up, so we'll just disconnect this here. This is also the wrong size battery too. This is a 24F. This is for like V8s, so this is a huge battery, definitely overkill for this. I'm gonna try to see what I can do about this. I might be able, because this battery is from Costco, I'm gonna go see if I can try to get this swapped out with like a Group 34 battery, which is gonna be a little bit smaller and better size for this motor. Looks like everything's done draining down here. Now we're just gonna throw our plugs back in, and then we'll move on over to the transmission and the transfer case. We're gonna be moving on to our transfer case. It's gonna be this one right here, right in the middle. This is a 17 millimeter bolt right down here. I already cracked it loose. For the transmission, we're on the passenger side over here. If you look inside your wheel well here, there's a little port on this cover piece. It's easiest if you take this cover off, but you can do it with it on. There's a little plug right here. Again, that's another 17 millimeter. I just broke it loose. We're gonna get in here and drain this plug. And we got this draining now. We are also going to have to remove the oil cooler lines. So the oil cooler is this right here behind your intercooler, but the lines to it go to the bottom of the pan, and it is these two bolts right here. There's two bolts right behind your oil filter. Looks like the only way to get to them is to remove your oil filter. So we'll remove our oil filter. I got one of those bolts off needed for the oil cooler. There is a second one, and I cannot get it off because of this bracket piece right here. I cannot get my wrench in there, so this whole piece is gonna have to come off down here. Looks like it's two bolts here and then two bolts in the back, I think. We can drop this, get these cover pieces off right here from the wheel well, and then I should be able to have access. Now that we have all of our fluids drained out here, we are going to be pulling the downpipe off here next. So there's going to be two bolts, one here, and then one on your other side. And then there's also this little O2 sensor harness that we'll have to unclip here. And then we'll also get the other 2 bolts in the back on the rear bank of the motor. And then we can drop this down. We might need to disconnect it all the way from the back there in order to completely remove it. I have both of my nuts out of the front downpipe here. Looking at that back one, in order to remove that rear one, looks like we are gonna have to disconnect our 2 O2 sensors down here. They're just these 2 pigtail clips on the bottom side. We'll get these out, and then we are going to need to remove our cross member bracket here. It's a couple of 14 mils, 2 in the front, should be 2 in the back. Drop this down, and that should give us hopefully a little bit of room to get that rear O2 sensor out, so that way we can get those bolts out of this downpipe. We got this piece loose and dangling now. It was actually quite a few bolts. All those bolts back there are what held in the backside. They're all 14 millimeters, and then we also do have this clutch assist piece right here that we're just getting off right now, just a 12 millimeter, and then this should be the only thing that's holding on this bracket here. I just took a break from getting that downpipe off because one of the bolts on the back side, it's loose, but the issue is I have to get at it from the top side because it keeps wanting to spin one of the bolts. I'm gonna start trying to clear out all of this stuff in here so that way I have access to it, so I can get like a wrench on it, a socket, or I mean just something to hold it, so that way I can get that downpipe off. So let's start digging into this a little bit back in here. We'll get this intercooler piping out of the way. We'll remove these heater core lines right here and see if we can free up anything to give us room back here to work. We're gonna get this radiator out of here, just a couple of 14 mil bolts over here, either 12 or 14, 12 or 14, and then the bottom hose is already off. We'll get this top one here, get this out of the way. Make sure to get your clips. There's one there, and then there's also one right over here. We'll undo these. Also get your overflow that goes to your radiator cap. Make sure to disconnect this. We have all this room here up front. It is missing the AC lines and also the AC canister unit that goes over here. It also looks like there is no AC condenser that runs up here in front. So that must have been taken off the car and removed. I was gonna remove it anyways because I'm gonna end up doing an AC delete. I did break one of the clips for the fans. It completely broke off inside of here. Wasn't really any preventing of that. Sometimes it just happens. I'm probably gonna have to end up getting a different clip here for this, but we can get off these last couple hoses up here up front for the intercooler piping, get these out of here and out of the way, and then we can kind of start working on getting a couple of the other things off the top here. All of these intercooler pipes are gonna go right where they belong, into the trash. Now we're gonna start working on our alternator. We do need to remove this in order to pull the motor because otherwise it looks like it's gonna hit on this corner bucket right here of the headlight. So first we need to disconnect it. There's one big clip right here, and this big one has a push tab on the back side. Looks like mine's probably broke, but this should pull right on out. We'll wiggle it a little bit and just be careful with it. And then you also do have this connection right here on top. This is a 10 millimeter. We'll get in here, make sure your battery is disconnected, otherwise sparks are gonna be flying. We'll break this loose, get this off. We're gonna first finish up on the transmission side over here with the transmission cables. We need to get these shifter cables off here, so I'll show you how to do that really quick. You're gonna first take this cotter pin out right here with a set of needle nose pliers. Pull that out, set that to the side. Looks like we have a washer wanting to come off. We'll take this off, and then we can pull this off of the actual linkage here a little bit. There we go. Then we gotta remove it from right here. We need to remove this tab bracket piece. Come in here like so, get a good bite underneath it, and we're gonna take it and kind of wiggle it back and forth to break it loose. And if you're having a hard time getting these keys out like I just showed you, I just sprayed a little bit of WD-40 on them and it broke them right loose. This is what it looks like when it's off. And this is all this is, just a key that fits over that little collar space right in there. Now that our shifter linkages are out of the way here, we can also do our fuel line since we're right over here in this area. We have our 2 fuel lines right here. There's a bracket that holds them on there. Undo the fuel lines from back here on the actual filter. The top one is a 19 millimeter. I just broke it loose. Be careful, because if it is on there super tight, you might break your brackets, but luckily I did not. And I also have a rag down here to catch any fuel that's gonna come out of this. And then there's also this small little line right here that I need to get this clip off of, and I should be able to get that one free. Now we're gonna need to get our slave cylinder off of the transmission disconnected. So we can see there's one bolt right here, right where my light is, and then there's also one on the bottom side underneath that will have to come underneath this clutch line right down here. So we'll get both of those out, and then we have one bolt right here on the actual that holds the clutch line in itself. And then we also need to get this clip off of the line, which it's the same style clip that I just showed you. And there's one sensor right there as well. We'll get this sensor off. It does have one of those pin clips, same style as this one right up here on the manifold. You need to remove this clip right here on top. It's like a paper clip. Remove that with a pick first, and then you should be able to pull that clip right off. Now we can get in here and actually pull our slave cylinder, and now that's free. So the only thing I have left now is just our little clip, and that's gonna take care of everything pretty much with the transmission except for the axle. All I'm gonna do now is we need to take care of this wiring harness. It starts over there. So it starts over there and it works its way on this way and goes up into the motor. So I'm pretty much just gonna be starting from over here and working my way this way, and we're just gonna start disconnecting stuff. Just a couple simple basic wires in here holding this. We'll get these off of the transmission here. And then also there's a couple of vacuum hoses and whatnot going over here to the fuel evap canister. We're gonna disconnect these. Now I am gonna delete this. Looks like we do have one more transmission connection. It's actually right here in the front. I don't know if this is the speed sensor or not, but do not forget this. I also will need to undo the starter cable, so I'm gonna go do that right now. We are down here with the starter. So this is the starter. It's gonna have this red boot on it usually. There's one 12 millimeter nut, it looks like, on that. And then there's also a little ground, there's a little ground clip right next to it that should just, it's just a pull tab that'll pull right off. And then you can see these are kind of, this loom right here is gonna be that one that we were just tracing down on the bottom of the transmission. So this is gonna be one of our looms that's gonna go back up with us, that we are trailing right now. So we'll get this off and then we'll continue on with the wiring harness. I just got the starter connections off, the two that go to the starter, and then off of this you have this little ground strap that goes to one of the transmission bell housing bolts on the top, right underneath the PTU. There's another dangler here that comes over the top. This is for the O2 sensors on the bottom. We're gonna start going into the main big loom harness over here and kind of see where all these connections go, because we're gonna have to start unclipping stuff there. If we follow the big loom here, curls around the actual shifters right here. Looks like this pushes up, so this is gonna come to the top. And we're gonna start disconnecting all of these wires right up in here. All these should be pretty self-explanatory when you do go to put these back in here. Like, these harnesses will only clip into the same harness one that it came out of. You can't really mix and match because there's no connectors that are the same up here. These are all the connectors, super easy. And then we'll need to disconnect this, go over there, see what we got. Since we're over here, we do have this other harness that goes over the top of the trans, comes over to here, and this is just the throttle body, something for the throttle body over here. Looks like that clip's a little bit broken. So we'll take this off, and then we also do have that one transmission sensor that goes on this one as well that we already removed. This is zip tied up to one of the coolant lines. We're gonna cut this right here so we can get this separated and take it off. All right, so now that's off there. We'll get these 10 millimeters. We have this one directly on top of, in the middle of the fuel rail harness. That one goes to our rear bank O2 sensor. There's also this little one right here. The two sensors over here. We'll get these both out of here, and then we just need these injectors. I got all the clips loose on it. You can see one of those clips right there. I have a set of needle nose pliers here. We're gonna carefully remove every single one of these. I don't wanna lose those. Here we go. All off. This also tucks right underneath the radiator hose and the thermostat housing. Right in there. We then have this whole next section right in here underneath the radiator hose. We just got all this wiring out here. We're getting it all straightened out. There is one more little one on this very front valve cover right here. All cables are now out of the way and moved back over to here. Looks like we do need to remove off of the starter. This is gonna be the starter harness. That one ground cable that goes in the transmission, that's a 17mm bolt. We need to remove that so we can get this ground strap off, and then that'll be it. Let's get this throttle cable off really quick here. Ah, shit, there goes that. Get that off. We're gonna need to go remove it from the actual throttle, so I'll go do that on the other side now. This just loops around, and you can see on here that there's like this little opening for this wire to slip out of. So if we pull this forward enough, we should be able to clear, and then we can just feed this top piece right out of there. I'll get this vacuum piece off since we're on this side right now. We'll get this back vacuum hose. Before we get our alternator and our air compressor unit down there off the car, looks like this is gonna be the last of our harness clips over here, and this is gonna be on a separate harness than our main one we just did. But we have this one right here for the O2 sensor. We can disconnect this one, and then there's also two clips that all go over here to the AC unit. Oh wow, that's beautiful. We're gonna see if we can get this alternator out of here without taking that belt off. I think if we can get this loose, we might be able to slip that belt still off. There's just two bolts over here, and then two bolts right here up top. I think we have enough room in here. And there it goes. So now we can take this, pull it out of the way. We're gonna drop this air compressor unit out of the way so it makes it a little bit easier to pull this. We're just gonna delete this out of here. You definitely get a great weight reduction by doing this. I believe it's just two bolts to remove this, one here and one here. And then if you come down here, I'm looking straight through the car. On the bottom side, there's two more bolts on the bottom. Yeah. I think we're gonna end up pulling this wheel off. We'll get into the wheel well here, see if we can remove the axle on this side, and then we'll get to the other axle on the other side. But we're getting pretty close, actually. We're almost there. There's not really much left that we have to do. I'm gonna save that one stinking downpipe exhaust bolt that I cannot get off for last. Let's get all these cotter pins straightened out here first, just to set up pliers. Get everything in alignment so we can knock these all out of the way. We'll do the same thing over here with the tie rod because we're gonna need to remove that one as well. This is gonna be a 19mm over here on the tie rod. It also does look like I can see a tear right here in the boot. That's gonna have to get replaced, the tie rod is. I just WD-40'd pretty much all these bolts on here. Everything seems to be seized to absolute hell on this. I can't get the tie rod arm off. We're gonna have to try beating that a little bit more. These felt like they were gonna break in there. I've had that happen once before. Not a great experience. I don't want these to break off in here for the knuckle. And then I haven't tried this yet. We're about to throw the impact on this and see if this bad boy wants to come off here or not too. Wow, so far. So that's good. Let's move on to these and try to get these without breaking them. But we're pretty much just gonna pull off this part right here, separate the knuckle from the strut, pull this forward, and then we should have enough room to swivel this out of the way to get our axle out. We will need to pull our caliper off here, two bolts in the back, and then we'll just hang it from the strut, and that'll pretty much give us enough clearance to drop this down. Everything separated and just hanging now. Be careful of your speed sensor line right here. Make sure you do unclip it from a couple of these spots so it has enough slack. The axle's out. This is gonna be on the driver's side. So on this side, there's a half shaft, so it's pretty long. We're gonna have to remove a couple bolts in order to drop it in the middle, and then we'll pull it all out as one unit. I'm gonna show you guys the axle half shaft right here. It's right above your downpipe. It's pretty much where it is, right by that rear bank. Now, if you look up here, there's two bolts right up there. Both of them are 14mm, and once you take those out, you can just take a pry bar to separate this from the actual motor, and then you can get your axle out of here. Here is our axle half shaft right here for the driver's side. It's a pretty long piece, you can see here. It just pulls right out. When you pull this out, well, first of all, here's the two bolts that I was talking about that had to be removed. They're pretty hard to get to, but you can get to them. Now, when you do pull this out, make sure to pull it out straight and support this by lifting it up. If you don't, you could potentially rip that seal in your transmission. Last thing to do on this side is we're gonna try to get the power steering pump off the car and remove that for when we pull this. We can access it, hopefully, from inside the wheel well in here. It looks like I could see up into here and kind of see where I need to get at. The pump is gonna be on the very back right here. 2 bolts, so we have one right here, and then there's also another one right up here on top. We'll get that one off right there as well. We can get this belt off. Our power steering pump in here is now officially off of the car. It was those 3 bolts that were holding it on. 2 of them were basically for the belt, but they also supported it, and then there was one last one on the bottom that was super tight. They were all 14 millimeter, and they were all on this side, nothing on the back side. I need to get that downpipe bolt off that I can't get like a wrench on the backside. It looks like I do have access right in here. I just got the downpipe off of the car finally. It was an absolute pain. Probably the hardest thing so far on pulling this motor to do. This is I don't know what downpipe this is. I can't find any branding or anything like that, but this is definitely quality material here. It's a full 3-inch all the way, and it's pretty dang clean. It's in great shape. Let me tell you why this was so difficult and why this is a stupid design. They have this O2 sensor right here on the backside, and it's also, even after you get the oxygen sensor out of there, which is already hard enough to do because it's right over the transfer case, your other bolt is right here on the bottom underneath, which doesn't leave any room for a socket to get in here to actually even get this piece out. And then getting a wrench on the top side of this, I mean, it's all the way behind the motor. There's almost no access to it to getting to that top side bolt or that nut in order to stop it and keep it from spinning. We have much better access to get our transfer case out of here. 5 bolts, I believe. We got one here, one up there up top, this one right here, this one up top, and then this one in the front right here. And I think these are 17 millimeters, so we're gonna knock this out. We'll set this down on the ground, and then we might need to take the half shaft apart, so that way we can still roll this car around and it's not just dragging the drive shaft all the way. Now that our 5 bolts are out, we can go ahead and slip this transfer case off of the transmission here very carefully. There we go. Here is the transfer case out of the car. Here's all the bolts I'll show you. So you have 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Do not lose those bolts. Keep track of them because they are pretty expensive and they're also hard to find. Yes, I know I'm an absolute mess. I've been going at this for probably like about 6 hours now. We're almost there. We're gonna get this knocked out in the day. It'll be out of here by tonight. I'm now finished with this side over here. We pulled that axle out. I'm just gonna throw all this back together temporarily so that way we can at least roll the car around. We're gonna get this axle off over here. We're gonna have to remove the wheel, do the same thing as we did on the other side. Only difference is we do have one of these locking lug nuts that we're gonna have to try and beat off out of here. Then we'll be able to get this wheel off. A 1/2 inch or a 3/8 socket that I just beat on there with the hammer. And we're gonna see if that's gonna stick good enough for us to break this loose. Looks like we got it off now finally. Wheels off. This is gonna be the same process as the other side. The only difference with this is gonna be the axle, which I'll show you how to do that. We're just gonna continue on, and when I get to the point where I'm removing the axle, I'll show you guys how to do that real quick. Here's where we're at on the passenger side. We have the axle now out of the knuckle here. So we are ready to pull this spindle out. The way I do this is to do it from the top. So if we look down in here into the transmission, so there's our axle right there, the green part. Now there is actually, like, when you spin that axle, there's a lip that you can see on it, which you can see a little bit of a ridge. That's where we're gonna put a pry bar in there, a really long one, and we're gonna use the actual transmission part, this part right here, to allow us to push that pry bar. What we need to do is give it a nice good pop, and that's what releases this one. This one isn't like the driver's side. The driver's side normally just pulls out really nice and easy. This one does need a little bit of a kick in order to release that C-clip inside. Get it to where we want it. Looks like we will need to spin this axle a little bit. That's pretty much where we're gonna set it, right there. and you can see my pry bar is on that lip. That's the lip that we're going to use to get this to pop out. First try. And I'll show you, looks like it broke free. There you go. You can see the little shiny part that wasn't there. So once that clip is broken, now we can just pull it straight out nice and easy. We're gonna finish up by getting the drive shaft off of the car. Here is the drive shaft if you're wondering. Looks like it is a factory one. It's actually pretty darn light if you ask me. I know a lot of people switch to either carbon fiber or aluminum drive shafts. I don't really see a reason or a need to do that. Moving our way onto the front here, we literally have just the motor mounts and that's it. We got one mount right here, which is one bolt going all the way through. There's the same exact mount in the rear back there, one bolt all the way through. And then we have this one right here for the transmission. And then this one right here on the timing belt side. At this point, I would say we're ready to get the cherry picker out, hook that up, get the chains connected on. Once we have a little bit of pressure taken off here, we'll go ahead and remove all of our bolts and we'll pull this thing out. I did have to pick up some things to make it a little bit easier for us to pull the motor. So this is just a engine leveler, and it's also gonna go right on my cherry picker, right on top of the motor. This should make things a lot easier pulling it out. I also do have just some carabiner quick release clips that we will put on here. One more thing over here, I did have to order a engine tab removal because this car did not have one, and coincidentally, my other car that I showed you does not have one on it either. We do need this to pull the motor. This is just gonna go right here. There's two bolts in here that hold it, and it's exactly where my engine leveler is gonna go on and where we're gonna pull this out of here. I just put in that front bracket right there for the engine removal, and I have my leveler right there. We do have the cherry picker set up and ready to go here. I'm gonna start with the trans mount first over here. There's a 17 mil bolt right there, and then there's a 17 bolt right here, and then we'll need to get this roller pin out pretty much right here, which is 4 bolts on the inside wheel well. Here's the 4 that you need to get in each one of those bolt holes. I just pulled off the rubber covers. Now with these ones, these are 14 millimeter. Be super careful when you get these out because you can lose that bolt in the frame rail. So make sure when you pull this out, you're super careful and you do not want to drop it. We might use a magnet. All those bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We did not lose a single one. So now we can come in here and we should be able to lift this piece right over here with probably a little bit of force and wiggling. Should be able to lift this up and out of here so that way we can completely get this mount out of the way. And then we have 2 more bolts down in here, and this completes this motor mount. Now that our trans motor mount is out of here, we can go ahead and throw our wheel and our other components back on over here. This wheel all back on and situated in here. We're gonna lower it down, remove the jack stands, and we're gonna lower it down onto the wheels. Car is back on the ground. We're gonna get this on the cherry picker now finally, and take a little bit of the tension off of the mounts, and then we'll lift it up and out. It looks like we're hitting up against our crash bar. Let's pull this crash bar off here really quick. Crash bar is off. I'm gonna end up pulling this reservoir right off in the front here too as well. I think if I don't, I could be running into some issues because it's right about where my jacking point is. This is pretty well centered, it looks like to me. We have our front bracket on here, and then we also have the other one on the back side, right on the backside clip, right behind this oil line that is annoying. I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on it here and hopefully relieve these motor mounts so that way we can completely break everything free here. The front mount bolt is now out. I did see the motor drop down a little bit. I was able to wiggle that bolt out, just lifting up on the trans and relieving some of that pressure. We'll now get the rear one and we'll save this side here for last. The rear mount is now out. A little bit of a pain to get to, but that takes care of the front and the rear, which means we have one thing left on this car, presumably, and it's going to be this. I think we'll be able to clear over here by leaving our crankshaft pulley on and also our idler pulley, but I guess we'll find out. As for this one, there's 1 bolt over here, 2 nuts over here, and then you have these 3. So we're just going to crack these loose right here. I already know there's tension on the motor holding this thing up, so we should be good, but let's get these off. We're going to have to jack this up to relieve the tension so that way we can get this main bolt pushed back through. I kind of had to force it out with just a screwdriver. You can get on the back side of it and pry it out. And right now, I'm just kind of weaseling its way out of here. And I think because we're on the threads, we can just twist it out. Now we got the hood off of the car. Last thing to do, we're gonna hook it up on the cherry picker here. I do have an extra set of hands. One person's gonna jack and the other person is going to kind of push the motor, stabilize it. We have a little bit of clearance over here, but not much. Basically, we need to lift it up, push it this way to the driver's side, and pretty much clear. Allow that transmission to clear over there so it can come up. I'm just double checking, looking, going around. Looks like we are touching the crankshaft pulley over here, but so we're gonna have to push this a little bit. We gotta get that to clear and then have our transmission get pushed over. Looks like we do have a couple connections right here for your oil sensors. I do need to pull these off. Good thing we caught these right here. Get these sensors off real quick, and then we'll keep trying to move it up here. That'll clear. Okay. That's just rubber.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Looks like we are gonna clear.
I think this side's just rotating up now.
That side should be clear.
And on this side. Wow.
She is officially out. We'll go ahead, pull this out of here, move it out of the way, and we'll go set this over there. I'm just gonna temporarily pretty much button this up so that way I can roll this car out. But at this point, pretty much this car is just gonna be a rolling chassis right now. All right, you guys. Well, there it is. Motor is out over here, still on the actual cherry picker. I do want to get the transmission off of here. We're just going to leave it as is for now. I am done for the day. I'm absolutely gassed. Everything went pretty decent. I'm just going to clean up, put a couple things back together, button them up, get this hood on, and then we'll get this car out of here. Hopefully this helps you out if you're looking at pulling one of these. They're not too hard to do. They're not terrible. They're not super easy either. It definitely would have made life a lot easier if I did have a lift. That's the one thing that I would want if I were to do one of these again. Like, comment, and subscribe.